Hello, I'm Michelangelo Maglake, a registered psychometrician, and for today, for the subject Introduction to Psychology, we will tackle about the first part on physiological basis of behavior. Well, before we begin, it is said that all of our impressions of the world are about us are communicated to us through our senses. And sometimes we use our sense organs singly. But more often, we act on the basis of a total impression mediated by several of our senses operating in concert or as a whole. And stimuli are energy changes in the environment. Stimuli are received by the sense organs and communicated over the channels of our nervous system to our muscles and glands. And therefore, we will talk about sense organs. Well, a sense organ is referred to as a receptor. It is a specialized part of the body which is selectively sensitive to some type of changes or stimuli in its environment and not to others. Stimulus is any kind of mechanical, physical, or chemical change that impinges upon a sense organ. And the behavioral reaction elicited by a stimulus is called a response. For every stimulus, there is a corresponding response or reaction. And every human being has the following senses: the sight or vision, hearing or audition, smelling or olfaction, feeling, and tasting. And in addition, psychological experimentation identifies other sensory mechanisms which are sense of balance or equilibrium, sense of muscle coordination, and visceral sense. Well, without our senses, we will not know what happens in our environment. Imagine how you would feel if you lost your senses. And for example, you are trapped alone in an elevator on your way to the 8th floor of a building in Ayala. And you stand there in total darkness trying to see where the emergency button is. Or for some time, you could not depend on your sense of vision, hearing, or touch. And you now feel very uncomfortable realizing how important your senses are. They work for us all of the time. Our eyes tells us the color of a beautiful flower. Our nose smells the scent of an expensive perfume. Our hands feel the smoothness of a luxurious car. Our ears listen to the melodious sound of a symphonic orchestra. And your senses warn you of some things that can harm you, such as the light that can blur your eyes, a sound that can ruin your eardrums, food that might be poisonous and too hot to eat or touch. Well, the senses start a communication network that allows you to experience and reach to things. Your senses transmit messages along the nerves to the spinal cord and onto the brain. And the brain interprets these messages and tells your body how to react. And this network operates 24/7 or 24 hours a day. Now let's talk about the first sense. The first of the eight senses, which is the sense of sight or vision. Well, the eyes are the sense of sight. And light strikes the cornea, a transparent rounded covering that provides protection and also helps to bend and focus the rays. Well, the light then passes through the pupil, which is an opening in the iris, the colored portion of the eye. When there's a lot of light, the iris closes, and with little light, it opens. This adjustment is automatic, and over a range of intensities, the size of the iris adjusts to admit the right amount of light. After passing through the pupil, the light is focused by the lens, which the lens has great flexibility and range and actually changes shape automatically to bring near or distant objects into focus on the appropriate area of the back of the eye or retina. When the focus light strikes the retina, or seeing actually begins. And the retina contains about 125 million rods and about 6.5 million cones. The cones are scattered around the retina but are concentrated primarily on the fovea, a recessed portion of the retina. The fovea is the area of clearest vision, and cones are receptors for color and day vision. The rods, which appear in all areas of the retina except the fovea, are extremely sensitive and function mainly in dim light. The point where optic nerve is connected to the retina that contains neither rods nor cones is called the blind spot. And the energy moves along the optic nerve and finally reaches the occipital lobe of the cerebral cortex of the brain. And that's how our sense of sight actually works. There are certain visual phenomenons that occurs in our sense of sight. These are the phenomena that we have to consider as far as our sense of sight or vision is concerned. We have the bright and dark adaptation, where we continuously adapt our vision to increasing brightness or increasing darkness in our environment. Our retina becomes responsive to the amount of light that enters our eyes. The pupil helps the retina regulate the amount of light by narrowing or widening to let in more or less light. When there is a change from brightness to darkness or darkness to brightness, vision is affected, and a period of time is necessary for the eyes to adjust to the surroundings. When you enter a movie house after staying in bright place for some time, you will not be able to see clearly. And after a few minutes, you will see clearly again. This is because our eyes have undergone the process of adaptation, a gradual increase in visual sensitivity under conditions of low illumination is known as darkness adaptation. A gradual decrease in visual sensitivity under conditions of high illumination is known as brightness adaptation. We also have this Purkinje phenomenon. During the early part of the night, we can distinguish red, yellow, green, and blue, although they appear somewhat blacker or grayer. And later, the red begins to darken, and the green and the blue begins to lighten. That is the effect of the Purkinje phenomenon. We can also experience visual phenomena like the after images. This is the visual sensory experience which persists after the external stimulus has been removed. And the longer the original stimulus, the stronger will be the after image. In the positive after image, the same kind of detail, brightness, and color of the original impression is experienced. After the object is removed, in the negative after image, you see a color or pattern which is complementary to that of the original image. An interesting aspect of color vision is that we sometimes see colors without external stimulation. If you stare at a bright circle of light for a few minutes and then close your eyes, you will still see a circle of light. If the bright light is red and you look at a gray sheet of paper, you may continue to see a red circle for a short time. This is called a positive after image. And if you continue to stare at the gray paper, the red circle will turn slightly bluish green. Similarly, a yellow circle would become purple, orange would become greenish blue, and so forth. This is the negative after image. The negative after image occurs because elements sensitive to the color being shown become fatigued after a time. There are also certain disorders of the eyes. We have the farsightedness or hyperopia, the inability to see near objects not unless drawn away or far from the person. We also have the nearsightedness or the myopia, the inability to see far objects not unless drawn close to the person. We also have astigmatism, that is a defect of the eyes caused by the uneven curvature of the lens. We have blindness, the inability to see objects either totally or partially. Color blindedness, the inability to distinguish or see colors partially or totally. And we also have the diplopia or cross-eyed. This is a defect wherein there is a wrong focus of light. Now let us talk about the sense of hearing or audition. Well, the ears are the sense organs responsible for hearing, and sound waves are the stimuli gathered by the ears. The hearing process starts in the outer ear, which carries the vibrations along the auditory canal. The sound waves hit the eardrum that acts like a diaphragm in a loudspeaker, vibrating in response to the sound waves. In turn, the vibrating eardrum causes the small bones at the inner ear, the hammer or malleus, also known as anvil, incus, stirrup, or stapes, to vibrate. Well, the hammer attached to the eardrum vibrates and transmits the vibration of the anvil, which passes it along the stirrup. The stirrup is attached to the oval window, a membrane like the eardrum. As the window vibrates, pressure waves are transmitted to the basilar membrane of the cochlea, where they are translated into neural impulses by the hair cells on the organ of Corti. And this in turn sends impulses along the auditory nerve to the brain. Well, the ears perceive sounds in three different dimensions, which we will be discussing on the next slide. As you can see, as for continuation of the slides, the ears can perceive or sounds in different dimensions. The loudness, the pitch, and timbre. Well, the loudness refers to the magnitude or intensity of the sensation produced, and pitch is to the highness or lowness of the sound. The timbre to the total quality of the sound. And there are different theories regarding this. This is the piano theory, which is introduced by Helmholtz. It presumes that each hair cell of the organ of Corti responds to a specific vibration to which it is turned much like the strings of a piano. And this makes us differentiate vibrations and sound. He also believed on the wave pattern theory, which is he believed that changeable sound qualities of pitch is the product of the combination of many nerve fibers rather than any single unit. And therefore, transmission of low frequency sounds require few nerve fibers, while that of higher frequency requires greater nerve fibers. And there are common defects of the ear, such as conduction of deafness, which is caused by reduction in the flexibility of the joints between the three bones, resulting to the hardening of these bones. Now let's move forward to the sense of taste. Well, taste buds contain microscopic hair cells called taste receptors. And taste buds are located in the papilla of the tongue, epiglottis, and soft palate. Well, taste is a chemical sense and it requires liquid solution for stimulation. Solids should be dissolved by the fluids of the mouth to stimulate a sensation of taste. And there are five basic taste sensations: the sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and taste of metallic substances. Well, the tongue has a specific area sensitive to the different taste sensation. The tip of the tongue is most sensitive to sweetness, the back of the tongue to bitter, the sides of the tongue to sour, and the entire tongue to salty. In most cases, our taste sensation is supplemented or affected by the sense of smell. And this is evident when a person suffering from cold complains that everything he eats has no taste at all. Let's talk about the sense of smell or olfaction. Well, when gaseous particles of a substance reach the nasal fluids, the sense of smell becomes active, and the receptors for smell are elongated cells enclosed closely in the olfactory tissues, which are connected to the olfactory nerve. Well, the olfactory nerve endings are on the top of the nasal cavity. Well, what are the six basic or elemental odors? And these are the following. We have the spicy or aromatic like the onions and cloves. We have the fragrant or flowery like rose and sampaguita. We have the ethereal or fruity like mangoes and guava. We have the resinous or balsamic like the pine or turpentine. We have the scorched, burned, or empyreumatic or the burning rubber or tar. We also have the putrid or foul like the smell of a decaying fish or canal. Now let's talk about the sense of feeling or touch. Well, the skin is the organ for feeling or touch. It is the most extensive of all the sense organs because it covers the whole body. Well, sensitive spots are distributed in different areas of the body, where one feels the four primary sensations: pressure, pain, cold, and warmth. Well, the skin is divided into three layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous adipose tissue. Well, the epidermis is the outer layer, the dermis is the intermediate layer, and the adipose tissue the deep innermost layer. Well, blood vessels and nerve endings are found in the dermis and adipose tissues. This enable one to experience skin sensation. And for every type of skin sensation, there are specialized nerve endings which react to a specific type of stimuli. Different parts of the body have different degrees of sensitivity for the various stimuli, and some parts are more sensitive to touch, others to pain, some to heat, and some to cold. The lips and fingertips are most responsive to touch or pressure, and the fingertips of and the cornea of the eye to pain. The calf area of the leg is insensitive to cold. The receptors of pain are located deeper in the skin tissue, and the internal organs contain very few pain receptors. Now let's talk about the kinesthetic sense or sense of muscle coordination. Well, a kinesthetic sense is the sensory impulses from muscles, tendons, and joints, which control the coordination of body movements. And it is the awareness of body movements. The muscles, tendons, and joints that have nerve endings attached to the nerve pathways to different parts of the brain for recording kinesthetic sensations. Well, these sensations from our muscles and tendons are used as tips for executing a variety of muscular activities from the most simple to the most complex. And the kinesthetic sense mechanisms and the semicircular canals interact in maintaining muscles control. And individuals who have had some damage to the kinesthetic sense find it quite difficult to walk and to maintain ordinary posture or sit and the like. Now let's move forward to the sense of balance or equilibrium or the vestibular sense. Well, the vestibular sense concerned with maintaining balance has receptors located in the semicircular canals found in the inner ear near the cochlea. Well, there are three semicircular canals arranged in the perpendicular planes correspondingly. The canals are filled with the lymph-like fluid and have hair cells connected to nerve endings. The movement of the head keeps the fluid in motion, stimulating the hair cells and registering a sensation of change in position. And the position and movements of the head control the body position in space. And overstimulation of the semicircular canals leads to dizziness or vertigo and disequilibrium. Let's talk about the last sense, which is the visceral sense. Well, the visceral sense refers to the sensory responses which are believed to come from the internal organs like the stomach, intestines, liver, heart, bladder, and genitalia. Well, the visceral organs respond to specific stimuli and record body sensations which influence our behavior. And these sensations are hunger, thirst, fatigue, and sometimes sexual excitement. Well, thank you for watching our first part on the discussion about the physiological basis of behavior on Introduction to Psychology. I am not requiring, but I hope you would subscribe for more lecture video presentation. Thank you everyone and God bless.